How's it going, everyone? Nick Templin here from Templin Scouting, on to another off-season prediction video. In this video we've got the Arizona Coyotes, and this should be an interesting one because this is a team that needs a lot of work, so let's get right into it. So a few of the things right off the bat that I know this team needs this off-season is to find a legitimate number one center, because none of these guys really fit that role. Nick Schmaltz is a solid second liner. I prefer Dvorak on the wing, although he is good at taking faceoffs, but after taking the faceoff, he's better off, I think, playing on the wing. Then you've got, Clayton Keller probably going to play on the left side, just so you can have Kessel on the other side, who, has taken a step back, but he's still a good player. Clayton Keller is still capable of really good things. On defense, they've still got Oliver Ekman-Larsson under contract and Jakob Chychrun. I might have an idea regarding Oliver Ekman-Larsson, as it seems like in the past, even though he just signed that long extension, there is potential that he could be interested in a move, so we'll look at that in a little bit. But first we're going to look at Arizona's free agents that they could re-sign. So Derek Brassard, he was kind of a one-year rental guy. They're not going to want him back. I think they are going to go ahead and sign Michael Bunting again. He had 10 goals in 21 games, which is really impressive. That's worth giving, over $1 million for. So we'll give him a 1.5. Let's just make sure my zeros are right. Yep. All right. And sign him on for 2 years. He makes a solid third line forward for them there, although I would play him over Lawson Krause, who's probably best off as a fourth liner. Looking at some of the other guys here, so Goligoski is aging. Demers actually struggled quite a bit this past season. But I think if you bring guys like that back on cheaper deals, so you offer 3.75. My zeros on that, got one too many there. So just bring him back for 2 seasons. Maybe try and get Goligoski back on a 1-year deal. Potentially trade him at the deadline if need be. So he probably goes for. He still gets points, so I'd say probably still pay him $4 million. This is a team that hasn't isn't going to have problems with the cap this year, so they don't really mind doing that. So 1 year for Goligoski, and then bringing Hjalmarsson back will be another thing they're going to want to do, I'm sure. Even though, again, not a great year for him, but don't want to let him walk for nothing, because otherwise they're going to have to completely recreate their defensive core, and that's not something that I think will be very easy for them to do this summer. So we'll get Hjalmarsson on a 1-year deal, $4.5 million. Probably could get him at less than that, but again, this is a team that's not going to be worried about the cap, and these short-term deals aren't going to be a problem. So for now, we'll just kind of set it up like this, but there is going to be some movement going on there. So then looking at some of the other guys here, I really like Jordan Oesterle. I think he has... he's a pretty underrated defenseman in the league, so they can get him back for, not too much. Actually, I think somebody else will probably offer him a little bit more, and he'll probably want to leave and go somewhere where he can kind of be a contributor to a winning team. Antti Ranta, that's a tough one, because Kemper really is their starting goalie. I think they might let Ranta walk, go find another team that he could potentially start for. So that kind of solves this. I'm sure there will be some guys in here that people say that are like minor league guys that they think should be resigned. But again, for the purpose of these videos, I just signed the guys that I think are going to be on the actual NHL roster for the upcoming season. So looking at restricted free agents that they need to sign, Connor Garland, that's a big one. Sounds like he might be interested in a trade out, but I think he's a guy that at the very least they can sign him to a sign and trade. So for the season he had, he's probably worth $5 million. Let's just see, need one more zero there. $5 million next 3 years. Sign him on for that. Throw him on your second line there. But yeah, we can look into the possibility of a Connor Garland trade if he's not interested in returning. Looking at some of the other guys here, there definitely are some guys like Dryden Hunt that they could think to re-sign. I will re-sign John Hayden. I think he's a really good fourth-line center for them. And Aiden Hill I will also re-sign because I think he will be their backup next year. So John Hayden, just go, $9.25 for 1 more year. Aiden Hill we bring in for, he could probably make just over $1 million as a backup there. Sign him for 2 years. There we go. So starting to fill out nicely here. The next thing I want to look at is the reserve list, see if there's anybody here that they'd be ready to kind of bring over now. Not seeing anything jumping off to me right here. There are a few guys here like Liam Kirk. I think will make it in a few years, or somewhere around there. I think Aku Ratti, the brother of Atu Ratti, is going to be a guy who makes the NHL eventually. But aside from that, nobody who's ready to go right away. So we'll just go with what we got for now. So we're going to look into a potential Oliver Ekman-Larsson trade. Oliver Ekman-Larsson's a great defenseman, great leader, good captain, and he's definitely somebody that the Coyotes would miss. That being said, I think they can start to kind of build this defense around Jakob Chychrun, who is also a very solid defender, and they can get a lot of value out of Ekman-Larsson. So we can take a look at a potential center that could be sent their way. Looking at some of the teams that would be interested in dealing a center away this offseason, potentially Nashville, but I do have an idea in mind for where some of Nashville's players are going to go. We already got Claude Giroux to Ottawa in our last video. The Rangers, no. Islanders, no. Looking at Washington, there has been talk about potentially Kuznetsov being a trade piece, but I'm going to not go with them because I don't think that Oliver Ekman-Larsson fits what Washington is really looking for right now. So looking through some of the other teams that have centers that could get dealt, I think, we already looked at San Jose, so we don't have any trades to make there. Looking at Boston, no, I don't think there's anyone there. Eichel, we've already traded to Minnesota. The Flames, I do have an idea for one of the Flames players. The Hurricanes might be a team that you could look at, but again, I don't think, because you want to get somebody pretty solid, and you're not going to get Sebastian Aho from the Hurricanes, so I think that's kind of out of the question. Looking at Dallas, I don't think so. Looking at Florida, no. Edmonton, no. Yeah, this is a tough one, but there's got to be something out there that kind of fits what they're looking for. Penguins, there's potential there. I don't think either Malkin or Crosby are even going to be considered on the move. And I think if you want to make this deal, you probably want to get somebody who's a bit on the younger side. So you could look at St. Louis, actually. This could be an interesting one to take a look at. And obviously, not going to look at O'Reilly. Could look at Shen. I don't think Shen's the guy to look at. Robert Thomas is a guy you could look at. He just came off a pretty tough year, though, so probably don't want to make that move. Toronto, I do like a possibility of trying to acquire Mitch Marner from Toronto, but the only issue with that is that it's been quite a while since Marner played center, first of all. The cap hit is a lot to take on, so he might not be the best option for center. Some people, might think, oh, Auston Matthews is from Arizona. Toronto's not going to be in any, if you call Toronto asking for Auston Matthews, they're going to hang up the phone, right away. So, Nylander, that's potential. He's another guy who played center before coming to the NHL. But he was in my opinion, I think he was their best player in the playoffs between him and Jason Spezza. So I don't think that they're going to be interested in sending Nylander away. Tavares is another option, but you have to be kind of concerned after seeing the injury that he dealt with in the playoffs and wondering if he can really get back to form. And he's not really earning his $11 million cap hit that you would hopefully have Toronto retain if you were to make a deal like that. Looking at Tampa, there is some potential to this. Would they give up Stamkos? I don't think so. I don't think they would. I mean, you could understand why it would make sense. You've got Braden Point as your number one center now. You're going to be running into potentially a lot of cap issues this offseason, which I've already tried to kind of help them out with in my Detroit video. But you know, that one trade is only really a drop in the bucket of what they need to do this offseason. So potentially Stamkos could be a guy on the move. Not sure that that's going to actually happen though. So, you know, looking through all the options, it's pretty tough to decide. You know, you could look at Vegas as well. But it's hard to find somebody that would be available that would be up to the value of an Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So we might just try and do something a little bit less extreme than that in the end. So let's take a look at a team that might have kind of a 1A type guy or a 1B type center that could be potentially on the move. Looking at... Well, they could look at like a Casey Middlestat from Buffalo, but he hasn't shown really anything to be impressed by yet. Could look at the Flyers. I don't think a guy like Couturier would be on the move. I don't think that Konechny would be on the move. They could try and acquire... I can't remember if I've done this yet or not. I don't believe I have, but they could try and acquire Nolan Patrick. But just looking at some of the other teams, San Jose, Thomas Hertl is a really good option. That's one that I could see them trying to go for. So let's make that one happen. So I know I've already done the... You know what? I can't remember who I sent Thomas Hertl to in my video, so maybe I shouldn't do that. Because I do believe I did make a Thomas Hertl trade previously, so I should probably avoid doing that. Looking at Vancouver even, potentially, but I don't think so. I don't think that Bo Horvat or Elias Pettersson would be even potentially touchable here. So let's go back to the Blues. I think this option probably the best, sending Robert Thomas there. He's a guy who's shown a lot of upside, but it really did struggle last season. So we can try and make a deal happen here. So who would you send in return? Well, personally, I'm not a huge fan of Barrett Hayton. I think that you know, he was definitely a reach when they picked him at 5th overall. That being said, would he be too much value to go in this trade? I don't know. I don't think so. I think, you know, you could potentially send, like, actually, they might want to, yeah, they could send, like, we could make a much bigger deal here, actually, if we do keep Oliver Ekman-Larsson in it, which would involve players like potentially Perunovic, who's a really good prospect. So I do like that as a potential thing here. And a 2022 second round pick. Throw in Barrett Hayton. And then try and also get somebody like, you know, potentially Kiru could be an interesting option. Vince Dunn is somebody that, yeah, actually I like that. So looking at this here, we got Robert Thomas, Scott Perunovic, Vince Dunn, and a second round pick headed to Arizona for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Barrett Hayton, and we might have to throw something else in here just to kind of sweeten the deal. So we can throw in Kyle Capo Bianco. Oh, that's a tough one. Who has shown that he has some pretty decent offensive upside from the back end. So overall, send that trade off. So that's a pretty big deal. I don't know how realistic it is. I do think it's pretty even. You know, Arizona gets a draft pick. They get to shed a little bit of salary, potentially trade away a player that doesn't really want to be there anymore. Send away Barrett Hayton, but they, in return they get one of the best defensive prospects right now in the NHL in Scott Perunovich, but definitely underrated. So it's a guy that they definitely could acquire in a trade like this. Then they get a guy who can hold down Ekman Larsson's roster spot with Vince Dunn. Obviously he's not going to play right there, but he's a guy who will be in the regular defensive rotation. And then 2022 second round pick as well, just to kind of sweeten it for them. St. Louis, on the other hand, they get somebody who can fill, or at least try to fill, the role that Alex Pietrangelo held. They've got Barrett Hayton, who was a former 5th overall pick, and somebody who had a lot of success back in the World Juniors, although I try not to base too much of my scouting off of the World Juniors. It's very different than the NHL, and it's very different from even the domestic leagues that they each all play in. And Kyle Capobianco adds some depth to the back end, so overall I think both teams will like this deal. This allows St. Louis to go back to contending kind of right away, and just adding overall. And if you're looking at it from St. Louis's perspective and you think Robert Thomas, he's a guy that we still kind of want to wait on, see what he can do. Well, you're getting a guy in Barrett Hayton who I think is capable of doing very similar things to Robert Thomas. Maybe he doesn't have the same offensive upside that Robert Thomas does, but he is maybe a better center as far as taking face-offs and playing defensively. So, that's all part of it. So we're going to go ahead and sign those 2 restricted free agents that we acquired in that deal. So Vince Dunn can probably get $2.5 million. Let's just make sure my zeros are right. I don't think they are. There we go. 2.5 for 2 years. Let him prove himself. See if he can make more after that. And then also Robert Thomas, who they can offer somewhere in the $3.5 million range, just based off of the season that he just had. Because if they do go to salary arbitration, based on his statistics, this is something that they could definitely argue for. But I think in that case, they'd only be able to get him on 1 year. So just kind of give him a year to prove that he's worth that money. Let him play first line minutes, because I do think that he can earn that. But overall, it does make your team, it gives your team better center depth at the very least. I'm going to move Dvorak, I think, to the wing, but I'm just trying to figure out how to make all that work. So could take, he could be a third line winger here over Pitlick, and then go with Johan Larsson, let's see who we can. Jan Unique is pretty close, I think, to being ready. The other guy that could potentially crack the lineup this year is Soderstrom, so we can move Lyubushkin down, and Perunovich I don't think will play right away, but he is an option to call up for sure. And then as far as depth, you can bring up potentially Jan Unique, be a scratch, because I really liked when I watched him in, I believe Hamilton is where he played. I know I watched him, but I can't remember. I do think it was Hamilton, though. I was definitely impressed with him. He plays a nice chippy style of game, but he's also a solid offensive player as well. Ilya Lyubushkin will keep up in the NHL as a scratch there, and then one more player we can go out and sign. The nice thing about this is that we don't have to worry about being too strong of a player. It's not a big need or anything, but we'll try and find a center or something that they can throw in there as their extra forward. Sort by games played, just kind of go down to the guys who've played a little bit. There's Greg McKegg is a decent option. Let's go with Vinny Lettieri, though. And just offer him like pretty minimal contract there for a year. Just add a little bit of depth there, and there we go. So, taking a look at this roster, what I think about it. So, you got this nice mold on the top line of a really solid playmaking winger, a forward who can drive the net and score goals, and then a really good shooter in Phil Kessel. So, that I could see this potentially working really well. If it's not, you can always just move Dvorak up to that spot. He plays a very similar role. Move Robert Thomas down to potentially the second or third lines here. Actually, I'm going to put Dvorak on the second line over Christian Fischer here. And then second line, you got Connor Garland, who showed that he has a lot of offensive upside last season. Hopefully for their sake, they're going to be able to hold on to him. There's been a lot of trade rumors surrounding him as a potential sign and trade, but we'll see if that happens. And then looking at Schmaltz, he's a decent second line center. He's got that playmaking ability. And then you got your Christian Dvorak, who crashes the net hard. Then you got third line, Michael Bunting, guy who had 10 goals in 21 games last season, pretty solid. Johan Larsson, probably not an ideal third line center. You could see John Hayden take that role. You could see them moving Dvorak back to center just to have better center depth on the third line. But for now, we'll just keep it with Johan Larsson. Christian Fischer, good third line winger. Lawson Krause, good penalty killer, good guy on the fourth line to have. Same with Pitlick. John Hayden, good face-off guy, gritty guy as well. He'll drop the gloves for you. So, overall, it's a nice team composition. Looking at the defense here, it's now Jacob Chikrin's, it's his defense. I apologize if I said Jakob Chikrin earlier. That's something that I do a lot just because when I see Jacob spelled this way, I automatically assume that it's a European, and that's obviously not the case with Jacob Chikrin. He's a Canadian. So if I said that earlier, don't leave me any comments letting me know that I did, because I know I do that a lot, especially with him. I'm gonna try and make sure I don't do that again. Looking at so anyways, his pairing is with Nicholas Hjalmarsson, who I do believe they'll bring back for another year. Same with Demers and Goligoski. They've just been there for a while, and if they let all three of these guys go, then they're really gonna have to rebuild this whole defensive core, and I don't think they want to do that. And then they got Dunn and Victor Soderstrom on the third pairing. Hopefully they'll be able to kind of move Soderstrom up as the season goes on, just kind of get him more ice time and help his development. But I have seen some people saying that the fact that he was being played last year was kind of a rush in his development. I agree with that. He probably shouldn't have come up last year, and don't be surprised if he doesn't make the opening day roster with the Coyotes next year, but I do believe that he'll be a mainstay with the team at some point next season. Then looking at the goaltending, you got Darcy Kemper, who's been a really pleasant surprise for them. They originally traded for him to be a backup. Actually, I'm not sure if they traded for him or signed him as a free agent, but I do believe they acquired him in a trade from the Kings. I could be wrong about that. And then Aiden Hill, pretty solid young backup. I say young, but I think he's maybe 24 or 25, which is, young for a goalie, but, he's been solid. He's a big guy, definitely good enough to be the backup there. So they shouldn't miss Ranta too much. And it's nice to kind of not be overpaying to have two, solid goalies when you can have two solid goalies, for just over $5 million. So, or close, just under $6 million, I should say. So, let me know what you think of my trade. It is a pretty big one. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with this one. But overall, I do believe it makes Arizona a better team in the long run, especially if they hit on this second round pick here, and if Perunovic does turn out as good as I am expecting him to be. I think it definitely benefits St. Louis. Obviously, everyone says if you get the best player in the trade, you win the trade. I don't think that's necessarily true, because if all the pieces of the trade come together and help you win, that's totally different. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think. If you like this content, make sure you give it a like and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more of this in the future.